And we're live.
And we're live. And I didn't even know it was going to happen because I didn't get the whole countdown. The whole thing was blocked for me for some reason. I was just sitting here like anticipating. Welcome, everyone. Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. And boy, Israel is never going to stop until we stop them, aren't we, Jen?
Well, just keep poking at Iran. That's, I mean, at the end of the day, that seems to me how it's going to go down. They're just going to keep poking at Iran. So they want to get to the find out portion of the show. And the find out portion of the show will be the annihilation of Israel. So, you know, it very well could level Iran too, which is horrifying. But it will be the end of Israel.
Well, I'm not going to wish ill will on anybody in particular, but I will not sympathize one iota if this ends up happening as a result. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I do think that the public is getting restless, and I think it's just too in your face at this point, and there's too much exposure to the problem. We're obviously going to get into the whole story with Governor Greg Abbott of Texas and his decision regarding how he intends to use executive order against the city of San Marcos, which is what you would consider, well, I know you call it an outlet mall, kind of an area, but it's just one of those places that, are you messing with the background, Jen?
It was black for me for the same reason probably that I get the whole thing. So I just thought what would happen if I clicked it on and off and it worked. And now I also see the normal thing. So I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
I thought, sorry. It was bothering me. It was black on my end.
Well, you know, you usually like bright, shiny objects. And
well, it's, you know, black is a little gloomy for a background, but anyway, continue.
I would agree with that. San Marcos is a city in between Austin and San Antonio off of I-35.
It's where all this, for people who don't know, like I'm very familiar with it. It's where all the outlet mall are, like the Tanger outlet malls and that's all San Marcos.
Yeah, this is a very unique issue because I, for one, haven't really dove too deep into what I think is a very important area of discovery, if you will. City of San Marcos decided to take it upon themselves to find out exactly how much of their tax dollars were going to foreign aid, in particular to Israel. And it turns out that a city of 70,000 people is allocating $4.5 million annually to go to Israel. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
This isn't just federal dollars. This is actual state.
That is taxpayer dollars. That's taxpayer dollars.
It's the real thing.
Yeah.
And so the city decided, no, we don't want to do this anymore. And Greg Abbott decided not only is he going to condemn them for saying that we will not be allowing for any dissent against the state of Israel. Texas Governor Abbott threatens to pull San Marcos funding over Israel's ceasefire resolution. And so this threat to cut off state funding to the city of San Marcos after its leaders agreed to put Israel-Hamas war. Stop calling it a war. Stop calling it Hamas. This is a genocide.
I don't know this publication, so we don't know what the bend of this publication is. I don't know.
This is Austin. This is a local publication.
No, it's Austin American Statesman. So I don't know if they, but again, not everybody is, but if you're still referring to this as a war, then although they might just be referencing that because that was the actual name of their resolution. That might be the actual name of the resolution. All right, sorry.
That may be true. That may be true. The San Marcos City Council voted April 15th to advance a ceasefire resolution with a formal vote scheduled for tomorrow. That resolution includes support for ending U.S. military funding of Israel with federal and local tax dollars. See, that, ladies and gentlemen, is really where your tax dollars are at play. So when they say local tax dollars, that means the actual money that they take from you to pay the government. That's money that they are deciding without your consent that they're giving it to Israel. Abbott, in a letter sent to San Marcos Mayor Jane Hewson on Tuesday, of last week said there would be consequences if the resolution passes. The letter states that no governmental entity in Texas may enter into a contract worth $100,000 or more unless it includes a written verification that the contracting entity does not boycott Israel. The idea that this is in a city charter in the state of Texas, that you do not boycott Israel.
Well, here's what's even more frustrating about this, and I don't know if people remember this, but Texas has had an anti-BDS law on their books for, it was a long time. And in fact, there was a woman, I believe that she was somewhere in the Houston district area, that was someone who the school district would contract with for, I think she was like a speech pathologist or something like that. And when her contract came up for renewal, she noticed that there was a new clause in it saying she had to swear not to boycott, divest from the state of Israel. This is a Palestinian woman, mind you. So when she pointed that out, they refused to renew her contract if she didn't sign that deal. So she decided to sue them, and she won. So that's why this is interesting that this is happening in Texas, because they've decided that this is not okay. So that's why I think that this is obviously like a stunt. It's not something that would be real. But yeah, that's just my thought on this. They've decided this there.
Abbott added that the city's proposed resolution seems calculated to violate this law by calling for San Marcos to limit its commercial relations with Israel. The city resolution states that more than $4.4 million in San Marcos residents' tax dollars went to Israel.
Oh my God.
Abbott rebutted the statement, calling it hard to believe. What's hard to believe?
Well, you don't get to just say that unless you can dispute the evidence. So, I mean, you don't just get to say that. Okay, it might be hard for you to believe.
Abbott added that the resolution's call to reallocate those dollars away from Israel's military and towards essential domestic priorities are unacceptable. And a public expression of a desire to do what state law prohibits. You got a bad law there then.
It's already been not overturned, but it's already been sued. Like, they've already sued that.
Well, is there
like
any more
this has already been dealt with there. Anyway, let them pay out more money to more people that want to sue them.
Despite Abbott's claims, San Marcos resolution states that it seeks to curb anti-Semitism rather than promote, because this is promoting anti-Semitism, Jen. The resolution ends with the city council condemning any anti-Palestinian, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, and all xenophobic rhetoric and attacks. San Marcos officials declined to comment on Abbott's letter, saying they do not provide comment on items that are scheduled for consideration by the full city council. The resolution will be done tomorrow. This is crazy.
We're in crazy town.
But maybe not entirely surprising.
But isn't it interesting that this is, and simultaneously today I saw that Texas apparently has a new city, a city for Elon Musk. And it's a complete city that voted. I think it was established today. Like, they just got incorporated. There's this whole thing. It's called, I don't know. It's based around the SpaceX thing. It's somewhere outside of like Brownsville. I mean, well,
maybe he'll finally get that underground tunnel.
But here's the thing. I saw a picture, and this could have been, again, I never know now because there's no point to having the onion anymore. But I saw a picture of a giant bust of Elon on the grounds of what looked like where they were breaking ground for like this new center city. And it's going to be people that work at his SpaceX thing. So he now has an official city. So Texas is creating cities for Elon,
Texas,
while punishing the people in San Marcos for not wanting their literal tax dollars to go towards a genocide.
Sounds like the type of thing that's now going to become a trend. The next thing you know, Bezos will have one, Zuckerberg will have one.
Right. Well, I forwarded the thing to you, and I'm like, this is the most Texas thing I've ever seen. Elon Musk
and the
getting
final
a city.
thought before you bring up your graphic, Abbott can categorize the resolution as pro-Hamas because everything, and I mean everything, is pro-Hamas. Israel is a stalwart ally of the U.S. and a friend to Texas. No, they aren't. In fact, they are the enemy of all enemies, as far as I'm concerned. No friend of the United States, and certainly not a friend of Texas.
Well, everything having to do with them is just hastening the downfall of American empire. But any standing or anything that honestly, I think we've been buffoons for years already at this point to the world. So I don't know how much of, but definitely our relationship with Israel or our connection to Israel is hastening our demise. And I'm kind of for it in that way. Again, like I look at them trying to pick a fight with Iran and I see it and I'm like, no, that's horrifying. That's horrifying. But part of me wants them to get to the find out portion. It's play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And the idea of that they're so arrogant that they want to start with Iran and they expect it to not end up with leveling Israel is insane to me.
Do you have that nice little graphic before we bring in Mr. Sosebee? There it is.
Is that what you're referring to? Or you want to discuss our little...
Ooh. Dr. Evil, Lord Farquaad, Syndrome, and Aloysius O'Hare.
It actually makes sense that Musk is the one with the city since Lord Farquaad was had his little kingdom. It actually makes sense.
I would agree. And this should not come as any surprise to anybody. But this is what happens when you allow for the never-ending concentration of wealth into the hands of a few people.
Few very small men.
Yes.
It's very small men.
And that also lies with what I believe is the biggest reason why we are contending with the state of Israel at this point.
Yes.
Everything is all related to money and power. I can tell you from my line of work that there are a lot of people who begrudgingly do business with Israelis/Zionists because it's part of the, it's part of the economic infrastructure that we've set up for ourselves, which is unfortunate. Doesn't mean that you have to work with them, but some people are just willing to look the other way.
And some people are choosing to really do things to work around it, like our guest.
That's right. And so for those of you who are not familiar with Heal Palestine, an organization that is doing the real work on the ground to solve this problem. And what a perfect effing time to have Steve come on this podcast when the face of the climate justice movement was nearly assassinated the other day by a drone bomb. Why, would you ask, were they trying to do such a damn thing? Because there was a cargo ship for aid to Gaza that Israel decided that just can't get there.
Yeah.
So with that said, Steve Sosebee, welcome to Generational Change.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. I could not believe when I saw, I had seen our local group, or I saw something put up about, I'm not on a lot of social media, so let me preface that. Something came across about what was going on at the airport here. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Okay, so I'll go to that. And I go to that. And then I start digging, and you've been doing this work forever. And I realized that you were the person who was the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. That was you. And I acknowledged on our show how incredibly ignorant I felt, that I had no idea that that was you. Because that's been, you've been doing this for a long time. I know that Heal Palestine is new, but can you talk about, please, how you got into this in the first place? Because I'm sorry for being so ignorant.
No, it's fine. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the work you're doing to speak on this issue and to help educate Americans and get more people on the side of justice and freedom and truth. So I started my life journey for Palestine back during the first Intifada. I was a university student at Kent State in Ohio, my hometown, which yesterday was May 4th, which was the anniversary of the killing of 4 students at Kent State back in May of 1970. And I was raised, before I could remember, of course, but born with that legacy in my hometown and raised with always a social justice kind of background by my parents. And when the first Intifada began, I was a political science student at my university and really got interested in trying to understand the issue and read a lot about the history and the politics of that region and the struggle for Palestinian rights and what was happening, why there was a conflict, what was the reason, what was the cause, and why it was ongoing, why couldn't it be solved. And obviously, if you open this issue up in your mind objectively, I think everybody comes to the conclusion that the indigenous population of Palestine, which is the Palestinians, were screwed out of their country by the British, by the Zionist movement, by the international community, by the United Nations. And that's the root cause of the conflict. Until there's some kind of just resolution for the Palestinian people, there's not going to be peace in the Middle East. And the Palestinians have demonstrated that they're not going to give up their struggle until they achieve some semblance of their national and indigenous rights. So I began working at my university when the first Intifada began, because at that time, that was a historical movement of freedom and justice. It was a grassroots uprising. It was a historical moment in the Middle East and also on the world stage. But never had we seen kind of an indigenous population without arms, without any kind of military force at all, just unify themselves and try to struggle against this huge military, which was using brutal force to suppress them, and doing so with American support, American tax money, and American weapons. And so I started organizing at my university. I was chosen to go on a delegation of human rights student activists by the ADC back in December of 1988, when I was still at the university, and went in for 3 weeks during winter break and lived with Palestinian families and saw with my own eyes what was happening on the ground there, the struggle, the cruelty, the barbarism of the occupation, but also the dignity and the courage and the humanity of the Palestinian people. I stayed with them, and it just changed my life. And when I went back, I finished my university degree, went back to work as a journalist in Palestine, wanted to share the stories of what was happening on the ground there before the internet, and found that to be frustrating. But I also learned so much, traveled around the country, all the time, met so many people, knew every corner, every village, every town, every refugee camp in Palestine. And during that process, I started to meet a lot of injured children who needed medical care. And I was an activist at heart. I wasn't a journalist. It wasn't my intention to become a journalist in my career. I just wanted to share the stories and help educate Americans. And during that course, I met 2 children from the West Bank town of Hebron who had been injured by an Israeli anti-tank grenade. A patrol of Israeli soldiers had passed his family while they were eating lunch and threw a grenade at them. It exploded. This boy lost both his legs and a hand. His sister was badly injured. So I befriended them. I did a story about them, but I befriended them on a personal level. And just an amazing family, very poor, from a very conservative family, but just full of life, full of energy. And I decided I wanted to help this boy and help his sister more than just doing a story about them. I felt like I'm not only responsible as an American for what happened to them, but also I think as a human being. If you see somebody who's suffering, a child who's suffering, and you have the ability to help them, then it's your responsibility to do so. Especially from a privileged background like my own. I'm a white American male. That's the greatest privilege that anybody's ever been born with in the history of mankind. So I went back to Ohio, and I took a photograph of this boy, arranged for his treatment and his sister's treatment for free, went and brought them over. This was May of 1990, went and got them, brought them back. They got medical care for free in Northeast Ohio, where I'm from. And it was an amazing experience because several things. First and foremost, the kids got the treatment they couldn't get in Palestine. The boy came without legs. He left walking with legs. Secondly, it organized the community, and it organized people to be more actively involved. I think then, back 35 years ago, as today, people are frustrated by the inability to have an impact on this issue in a way that's effective, that we can see real change. Obviously, when you see injustice, you see children being killed and injured, you want to have a bigger impact than just protesting or liking something on social media. It's not enough frequently for a lot of us to feel that we're doing what we need to do. So bringing these kids here and having them in homes and having people volunteer and take them out and so on, that was a way to get the community more involved and more active. It also educated a lot of Americans. They were on the news, they were in the newspapers, people saw their stories. And for the first time, people were seeing injured Palestinian children from the perspective, from a human perspective, not from this propaganda machine, which is constantly portraying Arabs or Muslims or Palestinians as terrorists, as subhuman. And that's how this whole genocide began, is because there's been this consistent effort to portray Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims as subhuman. You can commit a genocide if they're not equal to you or share your basic human values. So that's what I wanted to do. And so when I took these kids back and they went back with after their treatment, many people heard about them and came to me with so many other injured kids, and I started placing them in American hospitals. Then I realized I needed to do more. I mean, this is something I could do to show my solidarity and to have an impact for the Palestinian people in a way that showed them that I could contribute to the struggle, but do it in a positive way. So I started arranging treatment for these kids, and I realized, well, I'm just a 23, 24-year-old guy. Why don't I start a nonprofit to facilitate this? Because I went around to all these groups and I asked them, I'd like to bring injured Palestinian kids. I think I can get them free treatment all over the country. There's the Shriners hospitals. There's hospitals that'll take them. You just need to facilitate that and be kind of that bridge between these kids back in Palestine and their treatment here in the United States. But I couldn't get any organization to sponsor it. So I started my own, called the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. And that's back in 1991 we founded it. And then I met an amazing Palestinian woman. We fell in love in Jerusalem. We married. She was a social worker. So together we built the organization for 17 years together.
Okay, so you had a ringer. You had a ringer, is what you're saying.
No, I started the organization
Okay.
before I met her. Just to
All
clarify
right.
that,
But okay, how much better? How much better was it after her, though?
Oh, better in so many ways. First and foremost, she made me a better person. She was
but takes it to the next level, right? Like that's what she did. She took it to the whole other level.
By a huge margin for many reasons, because of her personal attributes as being a very intelligent and incredible humanitarian, but also just somebody who, as a Palestinian woman who was very independent, very strong. And, I was the first American guy, non-Arab, to marry a Palestinian woman in Palestine that we knew of, like, especially if she was Muslim. So,
I mean, not in the history of the region, mind you.
No, not in the history of the region, but in the West Bank during the Intifada, definitely.
Okay.
So, we built this organization together. And then in 2008, on Christmas Day, she was diagnosed with leukemia. We had 2 daughters. And then 6 months later, although, and that was, during the first major Israeli attack on Gaza, my wife passed away. Her name was Huda al-Masri. And I moved my family back to Palestine so her family could help raise my kids, because I was a single dad. I didn't have much help. And then I decided to honor her legacy by building a pediatric cancer department in her name in Bethlehem, which still exists today. And just the organization grew and took off, and did so many amazing things, and I was very proud. I'm very proud of the work that we did. And then when the genocide started, I felt I wasn't doing enough, and that PCRF wasn't doing enough. I still feel that way. And I could not get the board to agree to make the fundamental changes that was necessary for the organization to have the impact during a genocide that was necessary. So I left and started another organization with a broader scope that takes on not only the health component, but education, humanitarian aid, and leadership. And that's what HEAL stands for. The HEAL is for Health, Education, Aid, and Leadership. And, we're all struggling to do all we can during this horrific time to help support the people there and show them that we stand with them, and that we're going to do all we can to help heal their children.
Yeah, that's amazing. I am like, I'm sitting here mortified. Like today, I was seeing that there were, or the other day, there were all these wildfires in Israel, and we know it's because of all the non-native trees that were planted. And so, of course, I had to go and find the picture of myself planting said trees, no doubt on top of some demolished Palestinian village. And that was in the summer of '87. And then after I left, then it was the first Intifada. So you're sitting there finding solutions, and I'm a tool of ethnic cleansing. Yeah, that's where. Now I was 16, so I was a little bit younger, and raised extremely Zio, and very brainwashed, probably in a way that you weren't in your upbringing.
Not to the extent we're all brainwashed to some extent in the United States with just the propaganda machine, and then the way the media kind of portrays this issue. When I first went to Palestine, I was shocked because, you're fed this one kind of narrative of who they are and how they are. And then you go and you meet these amazing people who are so kind and generous and hospitable and opening their homes and opening their lives to you. And I'm an American. I'm responsible for their suffering. I'm responsible for the misery and the loss that they've endured in their lives. And they've been nothing but kind and hospitable to me. And I that changed my life a lot, just meeting people who are just so amazingly open and kind and generous in the face of such inhumanity.
Steve, despite how bad things have been over the past 18 months, do you believe that a corner has been turned regarding Israel-Palestine in terms of the Zionist state and what it will ultimately become going forward? Jen and I both are of the mind that the state will fall, that there is no coming back from this. This is a point of no return that they've crossed. And it's just a question of how, not if, but when the American population rises up and says the support of Israel is finished.
Well, I think it's a very complicated question. And the reason it's complicated is because we don't know how those who wield power on a global scale, and certainly on this issue, it's almost the same thing, how they use technology and how they're able to go 18 months into a genocide and commit the kind of crimes that the whole world has witnessed and watched and get away with it. And not only get away with it, but double down. Of course, Israel has lost its moral compass a long time ago. And when I first started my work on the ground in Palestine, there was, Israel was kind of like the United States in some way, at least the U.S. Not so long ago, where you had the Labor Party and the Likud, and the Labor was kind of this social progressive Zionists, and the Likud were the more right-wing one. And now the Likud is this kind of marginal, so-called not left at all, but I mean, that's what's considered the progressive Israeli ideology now. And the far extreme right are the ones who are just calling for the absolute annihilation of every man, woman, and child in Palestine. So things have shifted so dramatically. So Israel has shifted significantly, far more even than our own country here. And how that plays out for, as you say, is going to fall or something like that, it's hard to say. I mean, yes, Israel is no longer, things have shifted significantly. We see it, a lot of it's a generational shift, meaning that, the young people in this country and globally, they don't use traditional media. They don't read the New York Times. They don't watch CNN or Fox. They get
Thankfully.
So they get the media from the source. They get their information from the source, which is very powerful. And that's why they're having a hard time kind of convincing these people that the Zionist narrative on the issue of Palestine is the correct one, because it's not. And everybody can see that the brutality, the injustice, the cruelty, the inhumanity that's being imposed so brutally on the Palestinians every single day. You can't whitewash that through the traditional means that they've always gotten away with it. In 1982 they committed the Sabra Shatila massacre, and if that was to happen today, of course our attention spans are much shorter. But I think things have changed, and now you have a young generation now that don't buy into it any longer. They see what's happening. They see the stories. They see the suffering. They see the dead children, the bombed tents, the starving kids, everything that Israel is doing. It's for the world to witness. Now, the older generation are buying it, or still kind of using the traditional means of acquiring their information and believing it, but the vast majority of people no longer do. And that's why they're resorting to these kind of methods of not just silencing people, but doing so in an arbitrary manner, which is, you can't debate people. You can't counter them with the truth. You can't stand and make a moral argument for your cause. So you threaten them. You use these very autocratic methods to silence people from speaking the truth, or you commit acts of violence against them. And that's what they've resorted to because they have no other way. So yes, they've lost their ability to even counter those who are, I don't want to say pro-Palestine, but anti-genocide. They can't even counter them. So they just use every kind of method they can to silence us. And it's not working, and it's not going to work. And I think they know that, and that's why they're desperate and becoming more and more desperate.
That's what I think. I just wanted to say that you definitely found like a niche in the most horrible thing that's happened that I can think of. You have found this niche where like there's this joy involved in what you have done. And I felt that at the airport, and it's like, I'm going to cry. And it's like I can't think of a better way to contribute where it actually, that was the only thing that felt good to me that I did in like a year and a half, like that actually just felt good. And then I simultaneously, mind you, felt the whole premise of this was a sign that we have failed as a species. Like the fact that this entire thing has to exist is a failure on us as a species, but it was the only thing that felt good to me. You know what I mean? Like you found some way, like it's amazing.
So one of the reasons we do the airport greetings, and one of the reasons we started Heal Palestine, it's as much to heal our communities and to heal ourselves, because we're all traumatized. Not the way Palestinians in Gaza are traumatized. That's never been done in the history of mankind, but certainly traumatized to the extent that, we're witnessing this horrific, brutal genocide happening, and we're feeling helpless and hopeless about it. So there is an element of trauma that our entire communities, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Arab, whatever, if you're on the side of justice and you're a human being, you're traumatized. So by having these kids come and welcomed by this large community of people who are waving flags and giving them gifts and cheering them and showing them the love and compassion that they deserve and they haven't felt in so long, that also heals us. And that gives us the strength and hope and power to keep going, the courage to keep going, because this is a long struggle. It's just starting. And we have to be in it for the long term. And we cannot give up because we don't feel that we have a role to play in healing and helping the people there. We do, and we can. And that's why we started this organization, to give more people a chance to be involved. That's why we're a grassroots organization. That's why kids, when they come into the communities where they're being treated, they have host families. They have volunteers who take them to their appointments. They have volunteers who visit them in the hospital or take them out to the park or take them to get ice cream or whatever they need. We want people to be involved. This is your organization. This is a chance for you to use your time, use your energy, and use your compassion and kindness, and to give it to somebody who's been treated in such a horrific, inhumane manner that is often beyond the ability to even accurately describe what's happening. Yeah. Which airport were you at, though, by the way?
Fort Lauderdale.
I wish I was there. I'm so sad I wasn't able to make there, but I am coming down soon to start a HEAL community there. But we have a boy who arrived in Cleveland, a 12-year-old boy named Mohammed, and he arrived with a bunch of other kids who came from Chicago. We came into Chicago, and I took him over to Cleveland, where he's been getting treatment. And this boy, 12 years old, he lost his two other brothers in a bombing, his only other brothers. And he came with one leg amputated and another leg, which they were trying to save, and they couldn't. So they amputated his other leg. So he has this poor mother who's with him. She has lost her only two sons, her two other sons, and her only surviving son is now here and now a double amputee. And meanwhile, her family's back in Gaza being starved to death, her husband, her other kids. And every day she's on the phone with them, talking to them, making sure they're alive, but they're telling her, I don't have food. Our shelter, we don't have shelter. The bombs are going off around her. And you multiply that by every child and every family we have in this country. 35 kids now being treated here in the US. And you multiply that by the thousands, because this is what every single Palestinian outside is going through, which is this feeling of guilt, this feeling of trauma and anxiety. Was my family going to be alive? And I'm outside. I have a meal to eat today. I have shelter over my head. I'm safe. So you can imagine the trauma they're feeling. So having the community come and show her and help her and and give her the compassion and love that she needs and the support, it's such a healing process. It's just a human process. And that's what we're, as an organization, deeply, deeply committed to. And that's why we ask people like yourselves to come out, welcome the kids, but then also get involved with our organization to be a part of it.
Now I know you're going to have a branch. Like I was going to say, how can I help you? I don't know how much longer I'm going to be in South Florida, but wherever I go, I'm very willing to help. That was like the coolest thing. Great. It was very cool. And my one thing I also wanted to mention was I had heard from, there's a very tight-knit Muslim community down here, and like the phone tree, the WhatsApp, if you will, everyone knows everyone. And so I know I'm friendly with the sister of the woman who was hosting Lana. And one of the things that I found out was, and no surprise, that they wouldn't let her father and brother come with them because they purposefully are wanting to keep them separate. So they this is by design.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to throw in there, Steve, is when Jen told me about this event and what you had organized, and I saw this child with a missing leg, I wasn't sad. I wasn't joyous. I was angry. Very effing angry.
Oh, it's infuriating.
I've grown up around these people. I know what they're like. I know how they think. I don't like them. I never did.
He's talking about Zios. You really need to clarify who you're talking about.
Yeah, those people.
They're a problem here. In South Florida, it's a real, we have a serious problem here.
The biggest problem that exists. And if you're from Cleveland and you know our friend Nina Turner, there is a sizable Zionist population that is in the Cleveland suburbs, Cleveland Heights, places like that.
Yep.
No comparison to places like Miami, Boca Raton, Parkland.
We have a serious problem here. I have to leave. I cannot be here anymore.
And it's really it's all about concentrated wealth. That's all it is. And that's the primary reason why they're able to get away with what they've been able to get away with. Their wealth, which is primarily through the banking, diamond, and garment trade, is seeped into our everyday lives in a way that we cannot just cut the cord and say, well, we're not going to do business with you anymore. Trying to get tens of millions of people to stop using a certain bank, for example. It's not an easy thing to do, especially since community banks have basically been completely wiped out of this country. And you could thank Mr. Bill Clinton for removing Glass-Steagall for that reason. But all jokes aside, it is a great awakening period, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of times people didn't want to see the harm that we have been bringing to the rest of the world. But this is something that cannot be hidden, and it will never be forgiven nor forgotten. It's just a question of when. And like I said, I harbor a lot of anger because these people are extremely entitled. There's one person in particular who I was at an event with in Pembroke Pines. He's lucky. He wants to take him outside because I was this freaking close to doing it. And you can, and I'm Irish on my father's side, so you can imagine. I was looking at Jen. I said, I want him to look at me. I know
you were like itching for a fight. The level of entitlement amongst the people we're speaking of is larger than anything I've ever seen. There's a lot of entitlement, and so you mentioned, and I thought I heard you in passing. So you have 35 kids that you've placed. Is that what you said?
Currently, we've had several that have come and gone back to Egypt, where we take care of them there as well when their treatment is finished. So yeah, we have a lot of different projects. That's the kids coming out here. We also run a field hospital on the ground in Gaza, which has been bombed a couple of times. We just opened a new clinic in northern Gaza, but that's run out of medication. We have schools that we're opening and have opened. Our kitchens have just run out of food as well. So unfortunately, we were feeding thousands of people every day, hot, nutritious meals throughout the Gaza Strip, but those have all been closed as well. We have a mental health program that's ongoing both in Egypt and in Gaza. But as you can imagine, everybody's traumatized. As I mentioned earlier, every single person in Gaza suffered severe trauma, severe anxiety, and which is ongoing and only getting worse. So it's very hard to run those programs that have an effective impact. For the children that come here, we really treat them in a holistic manner. What I mean by that is not only are they coming for medical care, but we do enroll them in a mental health program. So they're getting therapy, and for their mothers and for their siblings who come with them. And also we enroll them in school because, one thing that gets overlooked, in the face of so much carnage and horrific scenes that we see every single day is that the schools have been closed in Gaza since October 7th. Kids there's going to be a generation of illiterate children. And how are you going to rebuild a society? How are you going to run a functioning society when you have 1 million children that can't read or write? And that's a huge struggle for us. The Palestinians value education so highly. They're such an educated people.
Yeah.
The level of literacy in Gaza is higher than the United States. At least it was before October 7th of 2023. So, destroying the education system, destroying the health system, destroying the basic infrastructure of Gaza. I mean, anybody who claims this is not a genocide is out of their mind. They just are living in a whole different planet and a whole different reality than the rest of the world. And that's fine. Look, we're all angry. We're angry at what's happening. We're angry at the people who try to justify it, the entitlement that you mentioned. But we have to channel that energy into something positive. I don't think it does the Palestinians any good. It doesn't do us any good. Although I 100% agree with your feelings, and I'm not discounting them at all.
I have so much rage. I have more rage like the past year and a half than I've had in my entire life combined, easily without question. And I am generally just a pretty, like chill, just want to hang. Like I'm a pothead. Like I'm just like a, live and let live person. The level of rage is so off the chart. So my question for you then is what needs to happen so that you can have more kids here? How many kids could you have here? Because 35 is nothing. Like,
no, it's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. We recognize that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm blown away and impressed. Do not take that the wrong way. But like, I'm feeling like, how can I help facilitate so that you could do more? What do you need to do in order to get more?
Well, I mean, the first challenge, of course, is these kids getting out of Gaza. Since March 5th, the Israelis have not allowed any injured children to leave. So there's literally 10,000 injured children in Gaza right now who need to travel for treatment. And in addition to that, you have another, tens of thousands of kids who have any kind of medical condition like congenital heart disease, like cancer, like any kind of neurological disorder, epilepsy, name it. They're not getting treatment for it. And so what I was doing prior to October 7th of 2023 is that we were strategically intervening in the health system there. We were identifying gaps, and we were sending in medical teams to operate on children with heart disease. We built cancer departments. We were effectively addressing the defects in the health system that under an occupation. All that's been destroyed. So, now when you send medical teams in, they're there to just remove shrapnel from kids' bodies. They're not there to train people and how to close a VSD with a kid with a heart problem.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah. So you have all of these kids who are not directly, they're being bombed, but their injuries aren't a result of a bombing. They're not trauma injuries, but they have medical conditions which could have been treated, but no longer can be treated because the Israelis have specifically targeted hospitals and destroyed the main hospitals there, which, we had put millions of dollars into, and, they were functioning hospitals with really very qualified physicians, they're all destroyed. If those physicians have been targeted, they've been arrested, they've been tortured, many cases even tortured to death, and their hospitals have been destroyed. The medication and medical supplies are no longer available. Pain medication, anesthesia supplies, not available. Chemotherapy drugs, not available. Heart medication, not available. So people are being killed in other ways, not just from American bombs, but from the closure, from the siege. And like, but to answer your question, we would love to get as many kids. I think the American hospitals are willing to take more children. They're willing to do it for free. We're willing to get these kids out the treatment and bring them here and organize that through all of the networking and experience that we have in that regard. But they're stuck in Gaza. They can't get out. We have, I can't tell you how many children I have in Gaza right now, missing limbs or suffering from gunshot injuries to the head or all these other kind of horrific injuries that I have treatment waiting for them in hospitals in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Detroit, in New York, and they can't get out. And so they're suffering. In some cases, they're going to die as a result of the lack of medical care and access to medical care. So it's like the Israelis are playing this kind of game of chicken, like, you know, who's going to blink first? Well, we're going to starve people to death. We're going to let them die, these slow, miserable, agonizing deaths. We're going to commit these horrendous atrocities, and we're just going to keep going until the world says we can't do it anymore. And as far as I can tell, that's never going to happen. So, you know, things are going to get much, much worse. And it's up to us as the international community and as individuals and as people who are on the side of justice, we're on the right side of history, to keep working and finding ways that we can have an impact, that we can do something and we don't give up. And to show the people in Gaza, first and foremost, the lives of their children matter, that they're, you know, why the world has turned it back to their children and they've dehumanized them to the point where they can be murdered like animals in the streets. We stand with them. We love their children. We're going to heal them. And we're not going to give up and we're not going to abandon them. And that's the main message they need to hear, because right now they come here and they're shocked at the airport when you're there, Jen, they're shocked to see people care about them. People care about their children. They thought the world had abandoned them. The world has abandoned them. The governments have, not the people.
Exactly. And yeah, one of the reasons that I have been saying the whole time that it is important to go to the gatherings and go to the route, not that I think that our officials are going to listen to us. I know that they don't listen to us, but I have heard from people that have friends or family or people that are in Gaza that they have seen the world people have coming out for them. They have seen, and I know it's been like a couple of months since there's been this complete siege, but I know that prior to that, that they did, and that they did feel that the world saw them in a lot of ways, and that was really important. And so that was one of the reasons why, even though I don't think our people are listening to us, it's so important to bear witness. It is so important to bear witness, and for the people in Gaza to know that the world is not forgotten about them, and the world does care about them. I mean, way more in other parts of the world than here, you know, but you see it, and you know, obviously nothing quite like Yemen. But I want to figure out a way for my tax dollars to go to Yemen. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know.
I want to figure out a way to get Steve in a room alone with Jonathan Greenblatt. That's what I would like to do.
No, we're not going to. No, Steve seems like a very peaceful person, and that's not his. Well, please, I mean, I live in South Florida right now, and I am very happy to help in any way that I can to facilitate that in any way. And it's hard here. We have an infestation of Israelis that's off the charts. And it's so displeasing. So anything I can do to be not with that would be much appreciated.
The reason we have to continue to speak truth to justice, especially in these times, is that, I mean, Israel has always felt that they have a get out of jail free card. That's always been their kind of disposition, especially since JFK's assassination. What I do think is of significance here is this level of drunk on power nearly created an international incident of the highest order, because as I'm sure you're aware, Greta Thunberg was nearly assassinated a few days ago.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal. And if she had been, I would imagine that the talk would have been something that they could not have swept under the rug. So here's what Greta had to say about her experience avoiding, barely, being on a cargo ship bound for Gaza with supplies for the Palestinian people.
Currently in Malta, where yesterday night, very close by in international waters, the Conscience ship, which was on a mission to deliver desperately needed humanitarian aid to Gaza, after 2 months of complete siege and blockade of humanitarian aid. This ship was attacked unprovoked twice by 2 drones, which caused a fire and a hole in the ship, which made it impossible to continue the mission. And 18 people were on board this ship when this happened. And since then, the boat has not been able by Malta to dock safely, which is why we are now pressuring Malta to allow them to have a safe pathway to dock and to not seize the ship. And I, with many others from all over the world, we're going to board the ship along with the people already on the boat just a few hours after the attack happened. And this is yet another example of how international law and human rights are being completely disregarded. This is an act of terrorism to attack a humanitarian mission like this. And it's not yet confirmed that it is Israel that attacked the boat, but we strongly suspect that because there were Israeli warplanes that were circling on a low altitude over Malta at the time of the attack and then returned to Israel. And previous missions of the Freedom Flotilla have been attacked and or intercepted by Israel, if not stopped already at the port due to bureaucratic warfare. We are currently watching a live-streamed genocide where 2 million people in Gaza are being deliberately starved by Israel. And this mission was yet another attempt to try to do everything in our power to break the siege and open a humanitarian corridor.
A
few minutes later, could have been dead. This person who rallied hundreds of millions of people around the world, she would have been dead. And they would have done everything in their power to sweep it under the rug. Say that it was an accident. I mean, they got away with doing it to the USS Liberty. So this should come as no surprise to anybody. I feel that the only way this ends, Steve, is when collectively we, the people of the United States, say, yeah, I've had enough of Israel. And I feel like we're getting there because there's a lot of people that we communicate with, particularly on the libertarian right side of politics, they're done with Israel. And when the people that are armed are done with Israel, that's when things are going to start to move. And I think they are moving. I think they are. They're not moving fast enough. And the one thing that Jen has talked about since the very beginning of this is how much Israel lies and how much we lie for them. They're claiming, and one thing I always find interesting about Zionists is that they always like to postulate about how many people are actually dead. Oh no, we haven't killed 150,000. It's only been about 75,000, so it's not that bad. Do you have an idea as to how many people have either been killed or are going to eventually succumb to some form of disease?
How can we know that? This is not. He doesn't know when this is going to end. I have been freaking out for a year and a half.
That's not what I'm saying.
How this ends without 2 million dead people in a desert. That's what I don't see how this ends without that. I'm freaking out.
What I'm asking is, are the conditions much worse than the corporate media and that supports Israel and the American empire letting on? Are circumstances much more dire than people would have us believe?
Of course, they're much more dire because, what we're seeing right now is the entire destruction of the infrastructure of Gaza, where there is no clean water. Food is not accessible. Children are living on 1 meal a day, so their growth is being stunted. Women are giving birth on the streets in tents without safe environments. Food insecurity is affecting the entire population. The hospitals are not functioning. So people with any kind of medical condition, as I mentioned earlier, any kind, hypertension, diabetes, you step on a nail and get you need a tetanus shot. You're not getting any kind of treatment. You wake up. I have a 2-year-old son. Imagine that when my son is hungry, we feed him. Imagine being a mom in Gaza, multiplying this by hundreds of thousands, and your child is hungry and there's no food to feed him. And and what's the stress? What's the anxiety that every day is built into your relationships with your with your neighbors, with your family member, with your members, your own children? There is no education system at all taking place. The kids there are traumatized every single day, sleeping in tents, moving. The boy I mentioned earlier who had lost his leg when he came here and his mom lost her 2 other sons, he was displaced 10 times before he was bombed. 10 times he carried his belongings on his back as a 12-year-old boy. So there's horrors, and these are just the tip of the iceberg, right? Where we can't even understand the extent and the depth of what's happening on the ground until you live it. It's beyond our ability to comprehend it. What we do know is the resilience of the people there, their ability to stay, for the most part, unified as a cohesive society, despite every effort to create divisions, to sow strife, and to create chaos on the ground. There has not resulted in a society that has fallen apart, despite the fact that a genocide is taking place against them. That is to great credit to the Palestinian people, to the Gaza people. And it's for their faith. It's because these are people who believe deeply in that they're not living a life of just materialism, that this sacrifice that they're making now in their lives, whether it's being imposed on them or it's self-imposed, is part of God's plan. That's what they believe. And that's what's getting them through this horrific, horrific period that is just beyond the scope of what other people could ever possibly understand. And we don't know, like there aren't any international journalists on the ground there, although we can always acknowledge and respect the brave Palestinian journalists who are being targeted and murdered every single day in Gaza just for sharing the truth. We don't know the true depth of the horrors that have gone on there and the stories that have taken place there. We know, for example, that the Israelis have bombed areas, and then as children lay on their backs wounded, that a drone will fly over them and shoot them. That they have these drones that shoot children while they're injured on the ground. That's never taken place in the history of mankind.
What is that?
It's the book by Rafat al-Arir, If I Must Die.
Oh, Rafat al-Arir.
Who was targeted and murdered, and he was, they sent him threatening texts. Why? Because he was a poet. Because he was an artist.
You have to get rid of the professors and the artists are always like you get them right around the time you start getting the journalists, because you get rid of the brainy people and the creative influences and the people that really help keep a society intact. That's scholasticide, that whole concept. Like that's how they do it.
Yeah,
it's like very methodical.
It's like burning the books.
Well, I always say, Israel's lying because their lips are moving.
Yeah.
Like nothing that they say has ever been true from their very beginning. Why would anything be true? I don't understand why anybody listens to anything they say.
I would ask you, we cannot thank you enough for coming on this evening, Steve. What I would ask is, what can we do to help your organization continue to expand, to facilitate more children being saved?
Right. Because it's not money, obviously. It's not just a matter of money, like what you're saying you're dealing with, right? So, what can people do to help heal Palestine?
Well, it really did. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. And this is one way to help us by getting the word out of the organizations doing good work like us and like ANIRA, like World Central Kitchen, which has been feeding people, and so many other organizations that are doing important and good work on the ground in Gaza. We appreciate these platforms and appreciate you guys giving us a chance to share our stories and the work we do. But I think the question should be turned around is to not what we do, lots of things. We're educating people, we're feeding people, we're healing them psychologically, medically. We get our communities to come out and support them. So the question is, what can you do? What is your skill set? What is your time? Right. How much time do you have to give? What are you able to do to open a healing community in Austin, Texas? And we have a quadruple amputee boy in Houston right now. What if you'd like to visit him or take him out to the park or help teach him English? Like, it's up to you to find what you can do to contribute. We'd love to bring every injured child here to get them medical care if possible. We need more people to step forward in places where we haven't sent kids, like Seattle, like Portland, like San Diego, where we want to get kids into these large metropolitan areas where the hospitals are great, where there's a large community, where there's a diverse community, and get them the care and support they need, for example. Or we need doctors to go on missions. Next week, we're sending 2 medical teams into the West Bank, one to teach pediatric resuscitation to first responders, because the situation in the West Bank is getting worse and worse every single day as well. With places like Jenin Camp completely destroyed, the Nur Shams refugee camp, Tulkarm camps completely destroyed, people not allowed to go back there. And if you do, you're shot by a sniper. So the West Bank is also seeing a huge increase of atrocities and crimes being committed against the people there. So we're sending medical teams in there. If you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you want to volunteer, go to our website, which is healpalestine.org, and find a way to volunteer. Reach out to us and be involved. Like, the important thing now, I think, for all of us is to not lose hope. Like, you know, there's always been dark days in history for people who've gone through these kind of struggles. Nothing like quite as graphic as this in modern history, but certainly we remember what it was like. And, you know, you can read your history books, what it was like in 1942 and 1943 for our Jewish brothers and sisters in Europe. We know what it was like for our African-American brothers and sisters here for well over 250 years, who were, you know, treated like farm animals, you know, to toil and to suffer and to be beaten and brutalized. There's been moments in history where you don't feel there's any hope or any light at the end of the tunnel. Stay strong. Don't give up. Find ways that you can keep working. Show the people you care, and do not be intimidated or scared to speak out and let your voice be heard. Even if you're surrounded by Zionists, angry, right-wing, radical Zionists, speak out. Find a way to keep getting the message out there. We're not going to be intimidated. This cry of anti-Semitism doesn't work anymore. It's not effective. It's not true. There are anti-Semites out there. They're not within the anti-genocide movement, at least not for the vast majority of people. On the other hand, you know, there is an effort out there to weaponize the Palestinian struggle, to weaponize the people who stand with the Palestinian people in their cause for freedom and equality and justice. And we have to stand against that. And this is a significant moment in history where free people have to be courageous and have to stand up and not be intimidated. And that's up to us to find that courage inside each of us individually and to organize collectively. You guys are doing a great job. I appreciate the work you're doing, the platform you've created, and giving me a chance to speak here. But let's keep going. Do not give up. Never give up. And don't allow the rage to take you outside of your humanity. I understand it. I feel it as well.
Yeah.
But channel that energy into something positive, as you two have been doing with this show, but also in other effective ways as well. There's so much positive energy that we can focus on healing our kids or doing something positive for the people in Palestine, that we're not going to allow them to make us like them. You know,
Exactly.
Don't become like them. Don't allow the hatred, the racism, the inhumanity to become who you are. We're better than that. We've always been better than that, and we're not going to succumb to that kind of thinking or behavior.
Thank you so much for what you do. Seriously, it's amazing. It's amazing what you do, and I appreciate it very much.
A bright light in a very dark world right now, but hopefully
Yeah.
not for much longer.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great conversation and a great human. Obviously has been through a lot and has seen a lot. I think about, in many ways, you know, you think about 9/11 and the fact that there are people who are still traumatized over 9/11 to this day, and they weren't even in it. So when you think about just how privileged, I understand how people get frustrated when they talk about privilege in the United States, and I totally get it, because I think it's a completely overused word. It is often used in poor context. But what I will say is that anybody in this country who is not seething over what is going on in Gaza right now, you are a privileged fuck of the highest order. You have no idea what real trauma looks like. Because as I've said, you can live in poverty, you can live in hard hit neighborhoods, but like a lot of tragedies that have happened, like Parkland in South Florida, like many of the tragedies that have happened across the country, these typically happen in privileged communities, and that's why it gets to television, and that's why it becomes a major talking point for years after it happens. But no one wants to talk about what's going on.
Well, and the difference is those are things that were traumatic events, but they ended. See, Palestinians don't have PTSD. There's no post. They've had trauma ongoing since, well, even before 47, but like there's no post-traumatic stress disorder. The children that are born into a concentration camp are born to people suffering from traumatic stress disorder. It's at this point, it's,
you know what? We shouldn't even wait.
We
shouldn't even wait, because I think that this is a very important.
So angry.
For those of you who are wondering, and before we do, we will do a quick shout out to all of you guys here. And for a show that isn't even getting a tailwind of status quo,
We're growing.
We're at 131 live viewers right now, guys. If you are
hit the like button,
make sure you get over to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel that continues to grow on the regular.
Or join here. We never say that enough. You need to say it that. Like, I think we need to say both things.
Yes. Also become a YouTube member. Right now, we are sitting at 21,893 subscribers. We have grown in the last 28 days, 1,441 subscribers exactly. Our viewership is hovering around 150,000 views every 4 weeks. I mean, listen, to the big channels, that's a day's worth of work.
Yeah, we're small potatoes.
We're getting there. We're working on it, and we really do appreciate each and every one of you that are here that is helping our channel grow. And that includes people like JG1982, gifted 5 generational change YouTube memberships.
That's really nice. Thank you.
Very, very much. And of course,
much appreciated.
16
Tony
months.
D.
How could anyone support Israel who kill kids? Your guess is as good as ours, my friend.
It's psychopathic. They're psychopathic. That entire, honestly, with the exception of the handful, and I mean handful of people that live in the Zio hell state, their majority of the people there are psychopathic in their mindset. They have been brainwashed and raised to be psychopathic. Everything that they say about the Palestinians is what they're saying about themselves. So all the crazy things that they say that you just hear that, oh my God, that's so insane that they would say that about, that's them using human shields, wanting to kill everybody like that. Everything they ever say about Palestinians is their own thing. These are not normal people. This is not normal. This is. I will
also say, the person that I've wanted to smash his face into the ground as hard as I possibly can, he's one of those. I don't even know how I would describe.
Are you talking about our friend in Miami?
Yeah, he's a mama's boy. He's a typical, nebbishy,
very
Jew
privileged
kind of guy, very privileged. Calls it, he's a male Karen, is how I would describe him in a lot of ways. Like, he would call the cops. He's that guy. And when we were at this event, this was like not long, I would say, after October 7th. This was probably around around the holiday season?
I don't know. When was Angelo? It was Angelo swearing in?
So that was beginning. It was like March, I guess, of 2024. And he's showing up with those dog tags. It's so insulting when they wear the dog tags that I'm Israel High, and in reality, they make it look like they were like serving in the military. This guy couldn't make it. He couldn't make basic for a day.
No, actually, when regards to the IOF, in regards to that, everybody does. And from what I've seen for the past year and a half, and from what military people and people who have served have said, they suck. All they can do is drop bombs from above. They're actual ground people. Like their people are nothing special in terms of.
No, I mean, they definitely have what you would consider their, the American.
It's a whole bunch of women with ponytails that look like Gal Gadot.
What I'm saying is that there are members of the IDF that are what you would consider the equivalent of the American, U.S. Army Green Berets, but that is a very small portion of the Israeli military. The people that really get their hands dirty, that do that shit. No, this is a country club. That's what this is. And I can assure you that there was one other event.
It's a country club next to a concentration camp. Let's say that.
Right. Yeah. And so there was an event that we attended at a friend's house who is a very affluent Jewish woman, and she is definitely on the side of the Palestinian people. But she had people that showed up at her beachfront property, and they were wearing those fucking tags around their neck. And let me assure you, they looked exactly like you thought they would. Over 65, white, Ashkenazi Jewish couple that are very well off, extremely well off, and think that this is what the real problem is. There is no getting through to people like this. That's what I've realized. And the reason I know this is because this is another example of people that were involved in the commercial real estate business. And I made a conscious decision not to communicate with them ever again, to never let them know about any business opportunities, nothing. And this is what should happen to every single one of them. So if anybody knows who they are, and you know, the good thing about Zionists, they kind of wear it on their sleeve. They
Travers, Wonder Woman is Linda Carter. Actually, no. Linda Carter is Wonder Woman.
That's correct. Not Gal Gadot.
No. I reject that completely. As a child of the 70s,
Chip,
Linda Carter is Wonder Woman.
Chip, thank you so much for the $10. It's always great
Chip.
to see you. And Mark J, thank you so much for the $2. We really appreciate it. All of you guys are great.
Yeah.
It really means a lot. And of course, our good friend. By the way,
Lila.
By the way, good friend, I am going to be in LA for a few days next week.
Oh.
I do plan on going to Simi Valley to see Mr. Reagan's presidential library. I think that'll be a very good excursion.
You would go do that on a vacation.
Yes, I would do that. I know.
You know what? Oh, I know you would.
Don't hate on me. I know.
I'm not hating on you. I'm just saying it's clear that you would do that.
We've told you guys that when we do our show now that we are going to have at least one segment that we do on this show where we are going to talk about these key issues that are almost an expose, I guess you would say, Jen.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. So that's sort of the problem.
Well, any of these stories that I think are relevant that I think people really need to know the truth on. I think that is
there's no shortage of that. That's sort of the thing.
Schultz, thank you so much for the $10. Please consider Nina Faria, recently interviewed on Red Nation as a possible future guest. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Rach, if you're catching this right now.
Yeah, Rachel, would you make note of that, please? And we'll look it up. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I know it's a cliche, and I know you guys have heard this time and again. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh, it's just a trope. It's not actually true. Well, I'm here to tell you guys, we're here to tell you guys that the Rothschilds actually did have a substantial amount of influence in the creation of the Zionist state of Israel. And this is not going back to 1948.
I thought we were going to do this at the end, like after.
We're gonna do Virginia Giuffre.
All right. Do we have anything that's like news that we're going to talk about that's like current?
Yeah, this is current because this just came out the other day. Do you really,
I'm just curious if there's something, if this is news, and I thought we were doing it last. That's why.
No,
we should do the Virginia thing first because we should have done it last time.
How about you run the show? You want to do it?
No, go ahead. All right. I'm just saying. I thought we were going to. All right. I'm sorry. Go.
You know what Jen is, guys? Jen's a backseat driver. She wants to be treated just like Wasserman Schultz.
Look,
she was
you're going to have
excuse me.
You're going to have 3 full weeks without me. Won't it be glorious?
You were so anticipating getting to Congress and having your own Democrat BMW that you could just drive around it and have people just kind of boss you around.
Okay, like I would ever drive a BMW. That's so funny.
No, you would drive a Volkswagen.
No, I wouldn't drive that either.
Yes.
No, I got a Chevy. Pickup truck.
The Rothschilds have been, if you want to know where the Jews rule the world, the Jews run the banking system, this is the family that this comes from. This has been going on for several generations, multiple centuries. This is not new, but there is a direct correlation here to William Rothschild and the creation of the Zionist state of Israel. Here we go.
Was Lord Walter Rothschild. He was a British zoologist and a member of the Rothschilds banking dynasty, a prominent Zionist figure in the UK and a liaison between the British government and the World Zionist Organization.
Which is now...
He did not write the declaration, but was chosen as the...
Which is now...
Well, the World Zionist Organization. No, never mind. I'm forgetting what I'm thinking of that became AIPAC. Not the World Zionist Organization. I'm sorry. Continue.
I know what you're talking about, but yes.
But this organization that he was talking about, I don't think is that anymore. Whatever this is, the World
No,
Zionist
this is
Organization.
APAC. Yeah, well, this is more of like APAC on a global level, I guess.
Yeah, it was way back, but that has transformed into something, right? Like it never went away. That was my point. I don't know.
No,
It's just not called that now.
Yep.
The recipient, indicating the Rothschilds' high standing and influence in Zionist and British circles. But what was the strategic context of the Balfour Declaration? Britain was embroiled in a brutal war and needed to shore up support from Jewish communities, particularly in the United States, Russia, before the Bolshevik Revolution, and Jewish financiers and influencers in Europe and America. The declaration was a diplomatic play to win favor with Zionist Jews who could sway political opinion or finance. Chaim Weizmann, a chemist and political leader, worked for years to get Britain back to Zionist aims. The Rothschilds, especially Walter and Edmund, supported Zionist colonies in Palestine since the 1880s. Britain anticipated the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and wanted to secure influence in the Middle East. Palestine was of strategic importance, especially as a corridor to India and the Suez Canal.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm just curious if this gets into the fact that before the Balfour Declaration, before that, the Britain offered to give the Palestinians sovereignty if they would help fight alongside them in World War I against the Ottoman Empire. And so they had promised that sovereignty to the Palestinians prior to the Balfour Declaration. Not that I think the truth is the fact that the caucasity of that the British Empire is giving away something that they had no right to ever have anyway. Like that, continue. It's ridiculous.
With just the fact that we have always said, and yes, I know it's a Jewish, trope, if you will, but it always comes down to money and power. And so when one asks themselves, and they think about the creation of the Jewish state, why it wasn't done, let's say, in West Germany right after World War II, or why it was even needed in the first place, but why they specifically targeted this region of the Mediterranean going into the Middle East, because of trade zones, Mediterranean Sea, and hence the Suez Canal. This is major financial implications for the region. Thank you, Debbie. It's good to know that you're hanging around to let us know what's going on.
Ironically, she didn't sign or wasn't one of the sponsors, rather, of that ridiculous thing.
It never got it. Well, she would have eventually, but it never got there.
She would have signed it, but I just would have thought she would have been up there with Gottheimer as one of the sponsors. But
well, it was a bill that never really got anywhere because it only had like 24 co-sponsors. I mean, that's nothing. Like you're talking, what'd you get, 10%? And that was combined between the two parties.
Sam, is that you? For the love of all that is holy, it's killing me if I have to know who that is.
But yes,
I think it's Sam.
But in terms of why this particular place was chosen as Israel, it's all because of money and power, ladies and gentlemen. There isn't some grand conspiracy here. This has nothing to do with beliefs or God or anything like that.
No, it was always secular. It was always secular. The real religious people, the ones that are being attacked there right now because they don't want to participate in the genocide, it's never been about them. The actual real religious Jews in state of Israel reject it as a Zionist state. They want to live in peace with the Palestinians. So those are the real Jews. Zionism is an abhorrence.
Abomination.
It is. Yeah. An abomination. Exactly. It's an abomination.
That's the right word. So when you hear Zionism, think abomination.
The Balfour Declaration laid the groundwork for the British Mandate in Palestine from 1920 to 1948, during which Jewish immigration increased. It became a foundational document for the Zionist movement and eventually the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. It also ignited deep opposition from Arab leaders and sowed seeds for the Arab-Israeli conflict. In the middle of the First World War, a one-paragraph letter changed the course of history. It wasn't sent to a king, president, or a general. It was sent to a Rothschild. And it wasn't just a promise. It was the beginning of a geopolitical firestorm that still burns today. The Balfour Declaration made the Rothschilds' name more than just a symbol of banking power. It made them a symbolic gatekeeper to the Jewish homeland.
I would also like to point out that Balfour was completely an anti-Semite, an actual anti-Semite, and actually, no, not as an anti-Semite and anti-Jewish. I'm tired of using anti-Semite to say anti-Jewish because I am not an anti-Semite. But I have a problem with white Ashkenazi Zios. So, there's that.
Well, as our good friend Brett likes to say, Zionism is an extremist political ideology that goes directly against Judaism and Jewish diaspora.
Yeah.
Israel equals forbidden according to Judaism.
Correct. Until the return of the Messiah. That's the entire point. And that's why when we had Rabbi Shapiro on here, guys, we recently had Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro on here, who is a Hasidic rabbi and was very happy to talk about how Zionism is not Judaism. We've covered this for a long time.
Jen, our new Italian friend and supporter, Kevin Pilati. Good evening.
Hi.
I am a recently acquired fan. A quick note for Jen. Be sure to visit Is Cafe in Cork City when you visit Ireland. It's a Palestinian restaurant. I had to mention it.
Okay, thank you. I am going there for a day trip. That is a plan of mine.
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
And
Which
thank
is why I
you
was asking Travers if he was friends with Tag. Is it Tad? Tad? Todd? Tad? I can never.
Taggy?
Taggy. Travers, put it in phonetically.
Okay.
But I'm I would be psyched to go meet up with him and do a little live or something.
Yeah,
or do a
Travers,
video.
Get your ass to Cork. Get your ass to Cork. And why
Well,
don't you
that's
meet
what I was
at Is Cafe in Cork? That'll be a good place.
Please don't. It's not good.
No, it's very good.
I don't like when you do the Irish accent.
Well, that's your problem, not mine.
Mm.
Chip, thank you so much for the $5. The British co-signed Zionism to protect their access to India and Iraqi oil. Sure seems like the most logical explanation to me.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you involve the Rothschilds anyway? There would be no other reason to involve them unless there was a banking component that they felt was necessary. And in this case, as was pointed out in the book that we discussed with Ken McCarthy, RFK and JFK versus Zionist extremism, one of the intentions and one of the main reasons that it is, again, not affirmed, but likely that JFK was assassinated was because he did not want Israel getting a nuclear weapon. One of the intentions of Israel with nuclear weapons was to actually use them, as many as 18 of them, to create a man-made shortcut for a path to India through, I think it was through Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, or Egypt. This is what happens. And this is why we, as Jen says, we have to bear witness. I mean, I think we could do more than that, but this is our sword to bear, and this is our responsibility. And so when people ask, what is it about the Jewish banking system that is a real thing? Well, you can show them this clip of the Rothschilds and how they made the state of Israel possible, because they did. And shame on all of them. There is no amount of blood that you will ever be able to wipe away from your hands for what you've done. That's a fact. Shame on all of you. Maybe.
He wanted them to register as foreign agents.
Yes, Manwith. They don't care. As I said, as was documented, and I want to talk about thorough documentation from Ken McCarthy. The Zionists were prepared to use 18 nuclear bombs in order to create a shortcut for their trading routes. That's what they were going to do. I don't recall Teddy Roosevelt ever suggesting we needed to drop a nuclear weapon in order to create the Panama Canal. But you know how these guys operate. impunity. And they've been doing
Also, I would suggest that there wasn't a nuclear weapon. So
what do you suggest then?
I would suggest that Teddy Roosevelt might do what was available to him as well, if that were available. You know, it's like you're comparing two completely different moments in history. You can't suggest that Teddy Roosevelt wouldn't use a nuclear weapon because he wouldn't have ever had known there would be a nuclear weapon. I'm just saying.
Is it Roosevelt or Roosevelt? Or is it a combination of the two? I had a teacher assistant in high school that said Roosevelt. And
I say Roosevelt. I say Roosevelt because otherwise wouldn't it be 1-0?
Maybe, but maybe not. It depends on who you ask.
Well, also it's probably accent related. I don't know.
I would say that'd be accurate. But one of the things that Jen and I have been discussing when it comes to the news, and this was something significant that popped up today, for whatever reason, this insane bill, the House voted today on HR 867, the IGO Anti-Boycott Act, sponsored by Representative Mike Lawler. Those of you who are wondering who Mike Lawler is, if I remember correctly, I think he's the New York State Republican representative that's near Elise Stefanik's district. And this is the type of stuff.
New York, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they worry about. Fines up to $1 million and prison sentences up to 20 years for Americans participating in boycotts of Israel or its settlements. And these boycotts are endorsed by international bodies like the UN or EU. Well, for those of you who watch our channel that are local to South Florida, including some people that I know that have been singing the praises, forget Debbie Wasserman Schultz, singing the praises of Jared Moskowitz.
Oh, he was one of the sponsors. Absolutely.
He was, yeah. Jared Moskowitz trying to be Josh Gottheimer. You could try, but you will fail.
Moskowitz or Mauskowitz? See? Moskowitz.
Yeah, Moskowitz. That's what I said, isn't it?
I thought you said Mauskowitz.
Mouse? He looks like a mouse.
He's a rat.
But
he looks like a rat.
Sorry, that's anti-Semitism for you. And I will tell you, speaking of rats,
he literally does kind of look like a little rat.
Oh, he's got a little bit of that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like Master Splinter rat-looking type thing.
So I saw somebody say there that this didn't go through. It didn't go through.
No, it didn't go through because they only had 24 co-sponsors. Like they couldn't get this thing moving. And I think that there's probably but this should be almost like a positive sign, because you would think a level that is this bold that they would have. I mean, that's not to say that they're not going to come back with another bill that might only have fines of $100,000 and prison sentences of 2 years.
Well, first of all, I just want to tell you this because you probably don't realize this. And I know this because I was watching Kim Iverson on her bit on this. But this is actually not its own resolution, but it is actually being added to something that already exists that is essentially a similar boycott, divestment, sanction situation that is already on the books. This is adding another element to it that will essentially add organizations. So in other words, if an organization says you should participate in BDS and you as an individual are affiliated or you have social media connecting you to that organization, that's what they would come after you for. Whereas on the current law, it simply says that you can't do it at the behest of a foreign government. But now they're adding or organization. So if you were inspired to BDS based on, let's say, Jewish Voice for Peace or whatever it is, they can now go after you for that, would be what this would add to the existing resolution. So it isn't completely novel. We already have something ridiculous that is this, just not as insane as this.
Well, this should also tip you off, guys, as to just how much our political and economic system is related to things like these types of resolutions. This is all about protecting capital. And as was documented in the clip with the Rothschilds, this is, in fact, why we end up where we end up, because everything is about protecting capital. And my goodness, if there isn't protecting capital when it comes to Israel, that's the whole point. And I will say, I also want to point out, I don't get triggered by much, if anything at all. You want to know what triggers me, Jen? You want to know what triggers me?
Children without their limbs, because
Well,
that does it.
Yeah, that's one thing. Another thing that triggers me is seeing these Zionist psychopathic bitches wrap the American flag and the Israel flag. Anytime I see those two flags spliced together, I mean, as Americans, it's the equivalent of wrapping yourself in the Nazi flag, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, it
Same.
absolutely is. It absolutely is. That is the Nazi flag now. That's the Nazi flag of this time. And it will be remembered as such. You know, like we have the Nazi flag that is looked at like that. We have in the States, we have what is considered the Confederate flag, which really it wasn't. It was the Virginia military or the Virginia militia, blah, blah, blah. But the Southern flag that is looked at with disdain now by most people because we know what it represents. That is what Israel's flag will be. For people who it isn't now. I mean, just like in another few years, like it will be that where that is remembered as similar to a Nazi regime.
You know, you also have to think back in terms of all of the efforts that was made for many, many years post World War II, particularly up until JFK's assassination and maybe even afterwards. But Kimmy,
hi,
welcome.
Kimmy.
Oh, look at this. 2 in a row. Kimmy, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Ronell
Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. You know her. You met her. Yes, I do know her. She lives down here. She is a belly dancer that lives in Hollywood. And remember, you met her.
Yes.
Former like big time New York on the scene belly dancer back in the day. She's awesome.
We're getting famous here on this channel. You gotta keep it cooking. Well, I am of the belief that a substantial portion of the Zionist movement had to do with why the Nazis were able to flee from Germany and just Europe in general to get to Argentina. The Zionists had a huge hand in that, as well as the Nazis who were able to emigrate under the cover of night to the United States and were also working with the US government in the Cold War against the Soviet Union.
Can I admit to the fact that I've always had like a prejudice somewhat in my mind against Argentina because, and people that, and especially like when I've sort of always had like a prejudice against that, not any individual or anything, but just that country in terms of, I feel like it is definitely harbors and has been harboring and known to harbor war criminals, and that it has like perpetrated that in some like promoted that to some extent. So I have a bad taste in my mouth about Argentina. I know that's not right.
Look who joined.
Oh, Lila.
Thank you so much, Lila. And
you know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean to say anything like, and so when I hear things, and even when you were telling me about how you found out that your family in some way had a connection to Argentina and they were German.
Okay, so I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret.
Well, I mean, that makes me think like a lot of then you get to present day.
It looks like I have a lot to atone for.
Well, not you, but like, I'm just saying like you get to present day. So now I have to wonder how much of current of Euro-Argentinian society, not any indigenous Argentinian people, if that is still exists there, but like white Euro migrators to Argentina, like what amount of that are descendants from Germany that were, people that fled out of, whether legal, shame, criminal, whatever. And I just, I wonder about that because that's not that long ago. So it's not that many, long ago descendants wise.
Well, what I will also say is I never met my biological paternal grandfather. I know that he was born in Germany and he emigrated to Uruguay, which is right next to Argentina. And this was at the end of World War II. So is it possible that I am related to a Nazi? It's possible. I mean, I certainly looked the part. So it's
you have to recognize that was a common route. That's all you're doing is you're recognizing that was a common escape route, was not from Nazis, was straight from Germany to Argentina. Oh, obviously through Uruguay or wherever, but like that was a common trade.
As I said, it's That's why you have that old saying of in the sins of the father. Is it your responsibility to bear? I don't know. What I do know is we can control what's in front of us. We cannot control what happened, 80 years ago. That's not our responsibility today. What is our responsibility today is, are we speaking up against the injustice that is continuing to unfold in front of our face? At what point does it stop? The only reason I believe that it has continued for as long as it has is because if we were to not have Israel as our conduit in the Middle East, the control that we supposedly have as that nation has, then the power, the American empire in many ways will crumble in a substantial way. I know everyone's looking around right now at things like tariffs and, what's that going to do? And Trump is floating this idea that he's going to eliminate the income tax. That's all well and good, Trumpy. But bottom line, the empire is crumbling. And I will always be grateful that Trump is our president. Because if he wasn't, we would have somebody in there right now who would be doing everything in their power to cover up every atrocity that is going on and never let it slip. Whereas with Trump, and I think it was Dave Hunter who pointed this out at the beginning of the podcast, that Trump let it slip a few months ago, right after he got in, that as many as 500,000 Palestinians are now dead.
And I think that's still to me, and that was however long ago that was. And now we're 2 months into a complete end of food entering, end of clean water. Which I thought they had done in the beginning, but apparently it wasn't bad enough. So now there's this complete, that's what Steve was just saying. They no longer have food or medicine to even give.
Well,
so how does this end other than dead people? This is
where we're going. And the reason when people complain about Trump and they believe that he is the reason or is the cause of all of the detrimental problems that we're facing today, when in reality, he's actually helping us eventually alleviate those problems because it's been blown wide open. There are no secrets. There's a thing called quiet fascism, and this is about people's being creatures of comfort rather than truth. And so this video should crystallize exactly what we're talking about.
I prefer the quiet fascism, not the flashy, in our faces, all over international news kind of fascism. The kind that genocides 100 million natives and then teaches that the land was empty upon arrival, and then 200 years later continues to break treaties and exploit the lands it promised to leave alone for the ones who survived. The kind that was built on the backs of black folks, kidnapped from their homes, chained in piles on ships where they would be disembarked into a lifetime of slavery and again, 200 years later, pay no reparations for. Instead, it segregated folks by the color of their skin, ensuring that the colorless, the cultureless, were always superior. A segregation so calculated and cutthroat that it inspired, ensuring that the colorless.
What is so superior about this woman, I wonder? I just think it's a coping mechanism of inferiority, and that's
of course, it's fear-based. It's fear-based. But yeah, no, I sent you this.
Yes, exactly. That's why I'm saying I just happened to see that sign, and I'm looking at the sign and I'm thinking the only type of people that think like this or make these types of expressions are people that have deep-seated fears about their own personal insecurities, and so this is their way of lashing out. That's it. That's a huge
and
part.
A lot of brainwashing from childhood. That helps
facilitate
it. Yeah.
There's that too. I agree.
The cultureless were always superior. A segregation so calculated and cutthroat that it inspired the eventual South African apartheid and rise of the Nazis in Germany.
That was our
and
idea.
then rejected those seeking refuge from that hell they inspired. That's the quiet kind of fascism. That's the
1 second.
What do you keep doing? Why do you stop?
those seeking refuge.
That was a very common problem leading up to what became the final solution in 1942. But keep in mind, it's the same problem. The Nazis, no credit given, but Hitler for many years was never attempting a genocide of the Jewish people. He just wanted them out of Germany. And eventually he just wanted them out of Europe altogether. But as many people know, when they attempted to immigrate to other places, whether because of Kristallnacht or whatever, they were refused entry. And
like here.
And this shipment, this particular ship of Jewish refugees, was refused U.S. landing in 1939. This was right after Kristallnacht. That's when this happened.
And it wasn't just one ship that they refused. I mean, they're talking about one in particular, but there were several. I mean, it wasn't just once.
Yes. And that is just an example of how we got here.
Refuge from that hell they inspired. That's the quiet kind of fascism. The kind that easily forgets what it's done because it distracts its loyal followers with shiny new rights and illusions of progress, but only for some. And that's enough for those who enjoy comfort at the expense of others. I prefer the kind of fascism that murders 1 million Iraqis, 300,000 Afghans, 100,000 Pakistanis, and got you to cheer for it. Got you to sign your kiddos up to go overseas and do the killing in the name of your freedom that is never actually under threat because you've never actually had it. The kind that rained bombs over Yemen and Syria just for funsies. Just to show the world that we can now kill you with flying robots without ever having to leave our couch. What a milestone. The kind that locks kids in cages and doesn't broadcast it on their Instagram. The kind that deports people, again, seeking refuge from violence it's caused or inspired. The kind that baits you with fear, holding your perceptions of freedom and the protection of already non-existent rights hostage for your vote every 4 years. Dangling your rights to maintain ownership over your body, to love who you love, to have access to medicine and food in front of your face like a carrot to a horse, so you just keep moving towards that edge until you don't even realize that you've fallen off of it ages ago. The kind that rejects that things like food and medicine and even education are to be viewed as a human right. The kind that will jail you for speaking out against yet another genocide that it is spearheading. The kind that will jail you again for refusing to pay the taxes they insist on using to...
It is amazing how we put this together today about what Governor Abbott is attempting to do in Texas for San Marcos, saying we will not allow our actual tax dollars. Yes, there's a difference between state and local versus federal.
Right.
Our local tax dollars, we refuse to allow this to be sent to Israel. And Abbott is saying, not only is this anti-Semitic, but I am going to withhold government contracts from your city if you even attempt to do this.
People want to know where they can we put the link to this in the description, like, so people can find this? Because I don't remember where it came from. It came up on my
Colin, I sent you the link if you can. Yeah.
Just stick it to in the so people can see. Yeah.
Publicly slaughter children, to starve children, to maim children, to set children on fire while they're sleeping, desperate for a break from the bombs demolishing their homes, their schools, their hospitals, their safe places, bombs killing their parents, their siblings, their friends, bombs that you're paying for. That's the kind we want. I prefer the quiet fascism, the kind that we all know is permeating through every part of our everyday, but that is easy to ignore because the news anchors, the journalists, tell you it's okay to look away from that. I prefer the quiet fascism. That's what we're supposed to say, right?
If that picture ain't worth 1,000 words, I don't know what is. This is probably New York City. This is one of those outdoor fancy restaurants.
I hate this clip, and I'm going to tell you why I hate this clip. This particular, this scene, because I've seen it before, okay? It's not fair. I'm going to tell you, because I have been places, like when I was just recently in Philly and I'm with my kids and we were doing our thing, and there was a march going on. We don't know who these people are, and we don't know where this march is. And I just feel bad for these people that are sitting there eating just because they didn't know a march was happening. They could be tourists from wherever they're from. Point being, it's just kind of, it's a bad reference point.
I think it's still very symbolic in a lot of ways.
I guess, but you're just they're using an image that could be a million things. But anyway.
I think you have some unresolved trauma from going to Philly and not standing with the marching people.
No, I just feel like everybody participates in their own ways. That doesn't mean these people are.
Okay. I will not stand corrected. That is definitely New York City. And look, there are
not everybody has to be involved in every single thing. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't make these people are not like bad people.
I'm not saying that they all need to be involved, but there is something to be said for recognizing what's going on. Because as I've said, people ask me, about my podcast, even in my line of work. I said, look, my politics is very agnostic. I just focus on a specific issue. And I will always stand on the side of justice. That's me. Now, is everybody going to agree on that sentiment? They may think that they do, but in reality, they don't. There's a lot of people who really like this idea of hierarchy, even a case system for that matter. There are people who are very content with that. I saw a YouTube clip the other day about advocating for feudalism, how feudalism would actually be better than capitalism. I mean, I'm not one to argue that point, but it shows you.
Well, kind of in a way, I get that actually, because, and Rachel has said this before too, as well, because she knows this history, but that back in those days, the lords took care of their serfs. It was kind of a different mentality. It wasn't an every man for himself mentality. So you were definitely a serf, but you were part of I don't know. I think it's worse. I think capitalism is actually worse, but
Jen wants to be part of the Knights of the Round Table, maybe?
Why?
I don't know. I'm just suggesting.
No, I want to like bring back like Black Panther ideology and have that be like a thing. I think we need to start building retreats and places. No, I don't agree. I think that we need to start building retreats and places that are kind of off the grid places, sort of a la Cop City, but that's for the revolution. I think we need to start having spaces that people don't know where their spaces are. And I just think we need to start understanding that. And that's what I mean, like this Black Panther mentality, where it's like, you need to meet the oppressor where they are, and you need to look the oppressor in the face. And you need to do that. Like, it doesn't get better by not addressing it. And you just need to somehow play that sick game. So I don't know. I mean, I'm in a whole different, like.
Clearly. Yeah. Jason Blanzy, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. We're setting records here tonight, I think, on that front. And Ozma Ansari, thank you so much for the 1999 super sticker. It's very, very sweet of you to do that. Much appreciated. Jen is about serious change, hence the name of this channel. Well, the name of the channel is going to change, guys. And on Thursday, we are going to have one of those revolutionary thinkers like Jen that we've been trying to chat with for a while. She's also going to be, they are going to be somebody, I've been forewarned. They are somebody who is also very friendly with Jacob Berger, who we are certainly hoping to get on our podcast soon.
He's in Malta.
He is. He is. And he better be staying safe out there. Guys, this is the Instagram link for the clip from the video that we just played.
And they use it from there, or does it have to be in the description? David Hunter, we are working on it. I have procured the services of a graphic person that is working on our little project. But yes, we are going to have a little bit of a rebrand. I'm going to be on hiatus for a few weeks. Peter has 3 whole weeks without me coming up. It'll be like, I feel like when I leave my house for a long period of time and I come home, it's like my house is, it's like it reminds me of like when I toured like the dorms before freshman year and saw the guys' dorms and it was just like gross. Like that's what my house looks like, or like a disgusting frat house when I get back from vacation. So hopefully the channel doesn't have some sort of like symbolic, mess. I'm sure that you'll be like having the summer of Peter with a big wedge of cheese.
You're killing independent Peter. We don't have to reference Jerry, but we can reference George or we can reference Kramer.
It's true. I get it. But so guys, I'm going to be gone for a few weeks. And then when I come back, we'll have a whole bunch of new stuff coming up. We're having we've been doing this for a really long time. Guys, realize we're hitting October will be 5 years.
Listen, I don't really care what the state and local officials say. We can totally reopen Alcatraz. It's a really difficult place to escape. We could totally put the refugees over there. That's where they belong, and we're totally going to make it happen. Believe me, make Alcatraz open again.
Oh my God. So apparently Lee Camp is going to do like a real good deep dive into that. And it's something apparently that he's covered before was Alcatraz in general. Like it's something he is knowledgeable about. So I know he's going to be doing a thing about the lunacy of why that doesn't work. This is something interesting. I didn't keep track of that. I didn't know. Is that a lot? Like, I don't know. 200 doesn't seem like that much, but
I guess.
I feel like it's more.
Well, there are those that do 5 episodes a week or who knows what, but.
Right. That's for us. It's twice a week. So
yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. And I turn 42 tomorrow. Jen turns 58.
Hey, what?
Just kidding.
What?
Just kidding. Half-heartedly.
You talk about your own self. Why do you need to tell people about my issues? I don't tell people when it's my birthday unless I'm like doing a thing.
Well, your birthday.
And I only do a thing if it can raise money for someone else. I've never done a thing. I cannot. And I like my birthday, but my birthday is about me and just me, and I don't really need other people involved in it. And I certainly don't need to be. I don't tell people it's my birthday unless I'm doing it as a fundraiser. Let's just say that.
Well, we could.
And you certainly don't need to be telling people my age.
I said I was joking. And
Okay.
Your birthday, God, you're so freaking sensitive, Jen. Yeah, so maybe we will do something. We can't do something for both our birthdays, but
I could put up that really cute picture I have of you when you were in your little Halloween costume from when you were little.
What, with my brother?
Yeah.
I was Bert and Ernie. That was Halloween 1987, as a matter of fact.
The fact that you remember that.
Of course I remember. You know what I remember a lot about that particular Halloween was that my dad's my grandmother, she dressed up as a clown with the big floppy shoes and the nose and everything. And keep in mind, guys, it wasn't long after this particular Halloween that the movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space came out. So you can imagine, and the fact that I used to watch the horror movies when I was young, that must be why I'm so messed up.
That explains a lot. That explains some stuff. You probably shouldn't have watched those things at a very young age.
I share my birthday with George Clooney, Willie Mays, and I know there's like one other person that I shared my birthday with. That was pretty cool. Who do you share your birthday with?
I don't know, but I did do like a little bit of a dive into good songs that were released the year I was born. And I am proud to say that the year I was born was Imagine and was also Stairway to Heaven. And so there was a list. There was a list. I must say, I might believe that the year I was born could be the year of like consolidated best music ever.
I would say that you were definitely born at a time where you got to experience better music than I did. That I will say for sure. So coming full circle,
you guys think he's a pet. He's not a pet.
Oh, thanks.
You guys think I'm younger than Peter? That's so sweet. Maybe they're just being nice.
I don't know.
Well, maybe they're just being nice. Although I feel like after the amount of times that it's been the inverse, like I have no problem accepting that. But no, Peter is younger than me.
I will definitely say that rock
Absolutely.
in the 70s and 80s, the 80s was the last decade of great rock music. And
then it went into the grunge phase. And I actually, the
Yeah.
90s is such a blur to me. And so that's unfortunate. The 90s is a complete blur to me.
so, guys, on Thursday, we will have Blakely. They will be our guest. And
Woohoo!
a fun conversation. So make sure that you are here on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then we are scheduled for next Monday to be speaking with Clint Russell of the Liberty Report. So we're going to we're going across the spectrum. They're going the whole way. You want the left side, you're going to get that on Thursday. You want the right side, you're going to get that on Monday.
Someone that I generally think we agree a lot. Like that is not, he's not like CanCon.
No. But Clint, like many other libertarians, has had enough of Israel. And we need to be consciously continuing to grow these widespread audiences to let people know that there really is a common ground here to get this. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
So,
and the truth is a lot of the red people, again, those are the people that will survive. Get yourself some red friends. Because I am not kidding that when the shit goes down, when there's no power, when the shit goes down, the red people are the ones that know how to survive. You need to have some of those people. That's all I'm saying. I'm just putting it's a public service announcement.
Pitch that tent, baby. You definitely got to pitch that tent and make sure that you do that. And I definitely agree with Asma. 80s all around. I may be an 80s baby, but I will just say that if you've got like that radio station, or if you're listening to Sirius XM 80s on 8, if you can only listen to one channel on XM radio and I'm stuck with one, that's the channel I'm leaving it on. That's the one. 80s.
Okay, so just so you know, here's some of the other songs from the year I was born. Maggie May, Brown Sugar, What's Going On, Joy to the World, Me and Bobby McGee, Take Me Home Country Roads, You've Got a Friend by Carole King, Ain't No Sunshine, this is Stairway to Heaven, the theme from Shaft. Seriously, like this is insane. Imagine this is Riders on the Storm, American Pie. Is anyone going to argue that this was not probably the single greatest year of like the greatest? Seriously, have you?
I don't know. I got myself a pretty great year.
I'm just saying, guys. Seriously,
she's a maniac.
All right, no, it isn't. It's the amount and the variety of the quality of the music that I am seeing from the year I was born. That is very impressive. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
that's all I'm saying.
Well, there was also chameleon.
Okay, so I saw Culture Club in concert. And did you?
No, I did not see Boy George in concert.
I did, and it was way fun. Just saying.
Oh, I'm sure.
Culture Club was a great show. They were fun. And they had their show here at the James L. Knight Center. It wasn't at a big, so it was a really good venue. Like that, it was, yeah, it was good.
Yes, and I will say that it's not the only great song, or songs I should say, that came out.
That's impressive.
The 1983 was also U2's first big album, which was War, which of course had Sunday, Bloody Sunday.
I was watching when MTV premiered.
Yes. Do you know the first song they played on MTV, Jen? 5, 4, 3, 2.
God, I know it, but I can't, like, I know that I'll know it.
Radio killed the radio star.
Right.
I mean, talk about the symbolism. It really just made total sense.
Do you know, I mean, like when I saw the Police, I was a Police fan. When I saw them at the Orange Bowl, this was for the Synchronicity
Does
tour.
that surprise you? Does that surprise you at all?
No, he's a pepper. He's always been a pepper. When I saw the Police at the Orange Bowl, which was my first concert where it was like I was choosing that I wanted to go see somebody and wasn't just like with my parents, it was the Police. And that was like, it was I don't know. The Police were amazing, but here's the cool thing. Do you know who opened for the Police was the Fix, which was also really cool. And who introduced everybody, who was the MC for the evening, was Martha Quinn. Yes, it was. And that was one of the coolest things.
You know that she's still doing video,
she looks amazing. Oh, yeah. Martha Quinn looks amazing. She's great.
Still doing her thing.
Love Martha Quinn.
All night long. It's hard to pick because there's a lot of good. China Girl by David Bowie.
Are you looking at songs that came out the year you were born?
Yes, Sharp Dressed
China
Man.
Girl was good.
Roma Regato, Mr. Roboto by Styx. That's
okay. And I love Styx. Do not get me wrong. I love Styx, but Mr. Roboto, not my fave.
One of the best songs, one of my favorite songs, Pink Houses by John Mellencamp. That the symbolism of that song, and again, it's very similar to Born in the USA in that it's a message that I think people misinterpreted at the time. You really have to listen to that song to understand it. It sounds like it's a America fuck yeah type song, but it's really not. It's actually
yes, Saved by Zero. Saved by Zero. Yes, Saved by Zero. You don't know who sang that. You don't know who sang that. Do you know who that was?
I know the song. I don't remember who sang it.
It was the Fix.
It was okay.
Who opened for the Police when I saw them, and thank you for knowing that.
Def Leppard's best song, Photograph, came out in 1983.
I know you think that.
Hysteria is a great one. So is Pour Some Sugar on Me. But for me, Photograph is their best song. Faithfully by Journey, Love is a Battlefield by Pat Benatar. Separate Ways by Journey.
But are you really comparing these songs to like Stairway to Heaven and Imagine?
I'm not comparing. Listen, everyone has a taste. I'm just saying.
We're talking like life-changing songs, not
Sharp
just good
Man
songs.
by ZZ Top.
There were a lot of okay, that was the year of Eliminator.
The number one song in 1983 was Every Breath You Take by the Police. And
that was my first concert. It was so good. I was obsessed with Andy Summers.
Do you want to know what the number one song in America was when I was born on May 6, 1983? The number one song in America, Beat It by Michael Jackson. That was number one. Da-na-na-na-na. There you go. Got it out of my system. It's out.
Oh, he has to do it every time. If the name Michael Jackson comes up, he cannot control himself. You cannot.
When I was
You've got to do that every time.
Have anybody hear me? Everybody listen to me? Have you ever heard Michael Jackson? Well, because Michael Jackson had a much deeper voice than people thought. So that was
the duchy on the left-hand side. Do you know that one, Peter? Do you know that song? Pause the duchy on the left-hand side. I love that.
It was a decent Rocky movie. I saw it. So one more time, guys, make sure you go over to patreon.com/generational change if you are not going to become a YouTube member. But we've gotten plenty of YouTube members tonight, plenty of supporters. We really appreciate you being here. We've got one final story to cover this evening. We wanted to cover
that we were going to do last time, but we didn't get to it. So we're going to get to it. And plus, it's always good to, promote Kim.
Our good friend Kim Iverson did a really informative clip regarding Virginia Giuffre. Is that, how do you say it, Jen? Somebody in the chat, let me know. Giuffre. I think it's Giuffre.
Giuffre.
So if anybody blew the whistle on the Epstein Zio sex ring,
so we're talking so we're getting to that she got Epstein.
I am of the mind that when you really dig into the details, as should come as no surprise to anybody, the story doesn't add up. Why would it? I think that there are different ways that people can be dealt with. Not everything is a bullet between the eyes. I know a lot of people think that that's just how it has to happen. But remember, there is a real thing called MK Ultra. There are ways of completely erasing people's memories. I mean, Lord knows they're probably advancing on that type of technology.
There's ways to kill people besides shooting them. They do it all the time. You can make it look like an accident. Look what happened to Jim Henson. You can make it look like a heart attack. It could be an infection. It could be all sorts of things.
And yet when it doesn't get talked about at all, then people really have to question exactly what happened. And that's why we're questioning it as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Virginia Giuffre wasn't just another Epstein victim. She was the face of the survivors. She named names. She filed lawsuits. She gave sworn testimony. She provided critical details that prosecutors, journalists, and investigators used to piece together the reality behind Epstein's blackmail empire. Virginia claimed that she was recruited at just 16 years old while she was working as a locker room attendant at Mar-a-Lago. She was allegedly lured by Ghislaine Maxwell with promises of money, mentor.
Can you pause it for a second? Why is a child working as a locker room attendant at an adult club? Just curious. Just putting that out there. Because that's an adult job. You don't get to be like, that's weird to me in and of itself. I know that that's a club. I know that people go that, like, whatever, it isn't just someone's private residence. This is a club, golf club, whatever it is. Why is a child working in the locker room of an adult club? All right, continue, because I think that's interesting right there.
And don't misconstrue, because in the time that I've been in South Florida and that you've been in South Florida, whether it's in Miami, whether it's in West Palm, it doesn't matter. I can assure you that when the age says you have to be 21 as a man to get in, it means you got to be 21. If you're a woman, it really just depends on how you look, because I knew of girls as young as 14 that were getting into places.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, women
So
never.
it shouldn't-
Women,
so it-
yeah.
Yeah, so it shouldn't come as any surprise. I mean, you could tell.
But as
just
an
by-
employer, this is that's a red flag right there. Now,
Yes,
she
but
was
you
a
also have-
teenager, yeah.
Yes, but what I'm also saying is that, I mean, think about it. A lot of these places, they're not run by square business owners. A lot of things are done off the books. There's a lack of a paper trail in many cases.
Well, no, this sounds like it was a
cash.
legitimate job. The way that she's talking about it sounds like it was a legitimate job. That's all I'm saying. I think that's very weird.
I've been a bartender. I was a bartender for several years. I bartended in a lot of different places, including very popular night spots. And I can assure you, it's a cash business. That's the bottom line. They want this done in cash because they don't want a paper trail. So who knows if she was even on the books? That's the other thing we have to consider.
And opportunity, but instead found herself trapped inside of Epstein's vast network of sexual trafficking. And she didn't stay silent. After a while, she fought back. She named some of the most powerful men on the planet, including Prince Andrew. Virginia accused him of abusing her on multiple occasions when she was just a minor. Watch this.
He's a pig.
I was so young. Keelan woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." I didn't know at that point that I was going to be trafficked to that prince.
She also accused our friend of the show, Alan Dershowitz. Dersh was Epstein's former defense attorney and one of Trump's impeachment lawyers. He also famously admitted to me under pressure on this show for having worked for Israel longer than I've been alive. Virginia accused him of abusing her multiple times at Epstein's direction. She also accused Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent who allegedly helped Epstein gain actor-age girls by luring them with modeling opportunities. And Brunel was arrested in 2020, and just like Epstein, he was found hanged in his jail cell before he could expose the details. Nothing suspicious at all there.
No, in fact, he just did it himself, because it was very easy to do that in a maximum security holding cell. Don't ask questions.
Well, that's why we're going to forever refer to it as being Epstein.
She also accused Bill Richardson, the former New Mexico governor, and George Mitchell, the former Senate Majority Leader. And Virginia made it clear there were more names, more politicians, businessmen, royalty, intelligence, connected figures whose names had never been fully released to the public. And as a result, Virginia faced threats, smear campaigns, intense legal pressure, and an aggressive media effort to discredit her. She pushed for Epstein's victims to have their day in court. She fought to unseal documents that revealed the broader web. And without Virginia, the Epstein story likely would have been buried years ago. And now in the middle of new legal battles seeking to expose Epstein's full client list, with Virginia having recently reached a confidential settlement with Dershowitz. She's dead. The timing could not be more suspicious. The pattern could not be more obvious.
Did she just say she had just reached an agreement with Dershowitz?
Correct. And then she's no longer here. How
people
Dershowitz
that reach deals and get money then don't go and take themselves out. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That doesn't make any sense. You don't take a good deal and then go, that makes no sense. This is not a suicidal person. So this is ridiculous.
Dershowitz has a lot of fetishes, I'm sure.
He's so disgusting. He is so disgusting.
First Epstein, then Brunel, now Virginia Giuffre. Here's a post from Virginia saying very clearly, I am not suicidal. She says, I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I've made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me, in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted, she says.
There it is.
Any questions? I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Oh, it's so self-explanatory. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll make any difference.
Yeah, they'll just claim that because she wrote it 4 or 5 years ago that now it doesn't count. No, it does.
Oh, it counts. It counts so much. It counts. I keep going back to the fact that she just reached a settlement with Dershowitz. Like, that's just that you always have to look at the timing of what happens. Like, this is someone who's been a thorn in their side for a long time. So you have to wonder, why now? Why would this happen now? They could have done it a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like, this is someone who, like, when she wrote this, she obviously thought that this is something that could happen. And this was from 2019. So why now? So then you have to look, okay, what are the circumstances surrounding this now? Oh, she just recently reached an agreement with Alan Dershowitz. That's interesting. Note to self. Because what other stuff has happened recently? Let's please continue.
So a couple of weeks ago, Virginia claimed that she was hit by a bus and only had days to live. This is an image from that she posted from being allegedly hit by the bus. Parents of kids on the school bus involved in a fender bender with Jeffrey Epstein victim Virginia Roberts Giuffre's car have ripped her claims that the wreck nearly killed her as sick and all lies. They, the children, got off the bus and said they had a small crash, said Emmy Rose Wright, whose 3 young children were on the bus at the time. The whole story is sick, and I don't know what's true and what's not, but I do know the injuries are not from the bus incident, another mom, Haley Miller, added. The bus driver, Ross Munns, has claimed the incident, which occurred in near Gabby just after 3 p.m., unfolded when he tried to overtake a slow-moving white Toyota Highlander driven by a 71-year-old woman. Munns was driving 29 kids when he started to pass the car just for it to suddenly turn right, causing him to clip the vehicle and damage its taillight, he said. Cops later described the crash as a minor collision and publicly said there were no reported injuries. Apparently, the bus driver got into a wreck with a 71-year-old woman.
Exactly.
Virginia Giuffre is 41. Who's to say that was the bus that hit her? What if it was a different bus? And they're just saying, well, there was a bus accident, but it was a tiny minor clip. And so that's what it was. And Virginia Giuffre is just clearly insane. So they chalk this up to mental illness. Then explanations came rolling in later that her bruising was because her husband was abusive. But now that she's dead and it wasn't a bus or her allegedly abusive husband that killed her, what was it? Well, apparently it was suicide. That's what they're saying. These allegations and strange events definitely paint a person as insane, right? Making it more believable that they killed themselves. It's just like, oh, you're in prison facing serious crime, so obviously you're suicidal. That's what they did to Jeffrey Epstein himself and his enabler, Jean-Luc Brunel, even though most people who are incarcerated don't kill themselves.
It's true. It's true. Oh, yeah, no. There's no way that she committed suicide. That's like the Kennedy that Oswald acted alone ridiculous.
I just think that we are entering a new age, if that makes sense. And I think in a lot of ways, the old way of doing business, which used to work, isn't working. And
no, but they're going to start. They're going to come up with some new stuff.
They're going to try. But I also think that it's not even a question of whether or not people could be indoctrinated. Of course, people can be indoctrinated, and many still will be. But I still believe, and I want to believe in my heart of hearts, that a lot of people are simply just questioning everything at this point. They're like, you know what? Maybe you're telling the truth. Maybe you're not. But I don't know what to think. And my instincts are telling me to not trust you. And I think that's a good place to be. I think that's important. Virginia is a hero. I think that term gets thrown around also too often. But I do believe that she is a hero. And as Progressive Lefty says, the files have still not been released. So people are still being protected. We don't know the full
She
scope.
comes to an agreement with Dershowitz, and this was apparently something. There is something very shifty that has to do with that total piece of shit. I feel it.
You close one door, you open another one. There is a level of depravity in the society, and again, as we have this insanely high concentration of wealth into fewer and fewer hands, you end up in these situations where everyone's asking, well, how do they get away with this? It's like, how do they not? Because they control everything. And depravity is something that appeals to people. This is also a problem when you have too much. You get bored. You start doing things that perhaps you're trying to test the limits of, could I get away with this? Can I get away with that?
It's so fascinating to me. It's so fascinating to me.
Well, then I also think that there is something to be said about whether or not people kill for sport. And I believe people do. I believe that there are things that take place, especially at these private events where, you want to try this, you want to try that. I don't think it's a stretch to suggest that there are people who want to know what it's like to kill somebody. I think.
Oh, I'm sure there's stuff like that. Oh, yeah. No. Oh, there's stuff like that.
So when you have these types of things happen, it only leads you to believe that, yeah, something very sinister beneath the surface is trying to find its way out and expose it to the public. That's why somebody like Dershowitz, who still walks free, I mean, he's clearly a protected man.
Order of chaos. What is needed for a free society? Actual justice. Justice. Yeah. Actual justice for all people. That's the only way. That's the only way you're going to have peace. That's the only way we're all going to be free. So that's the answer. Justice. That's a broad, it's a broad umbrella of a lot of things, but yeah.
It is. But that is why we must stay vigilant and keep fighting the good fight. So for those of you that are here, thank you again. Our channel is growing. Hopefully we'll have an even bigger crowd on Thursday with Blakely.
I hope she brings her people with her. She could bring her people with her.
If we get a tailwind off of Status Coup, we will see. But yeah, we got to almost 150 live viewers tonight. And
yay, us.
For all of you guys that are here, thank you so much. It means the world. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. Stay strong, keep fighting,
and
free Palestine. We'll see you Thursday.